Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's Zoom worship service on this beautiful Sunday morning. We are so glad that you have joined us for worship this morning. Whether you are joining us from the comfort of your couch, your home office, from down the street, across the city, or another state, you are welcome with us. Whatever fades you have known, if any, you are welcome with us. Whoever you love and however you identify, you are welcome with us. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. It is a great day to be together. I have a few quick announcements that I want to share. The biggest one being that the board will be holding information sessions and Q&A sessions this Sunday and next Sunday in preparation for our annual meeting. Our hope is that we can answer your questions and share with you some of the work the board's been doing and some of our anticipated thoughts about the budget as we run up to our annual meeting, so that when our annual meeting time comes, we can keep the business time as short and sweet and simple as possible. Of course, all of this will be on Zoom. These info sessions will be held right after worship. We will still have our coffee breakout options, and we'll explain to you how all that will work at the end of the service this morning. So we hope you'll stick around for that. I also want to mention that our Inquirer series for newcomers is starting up again. Also online, Sundays after worship. The first session will begin next week. And we know there were a lot of you newcomers that had joined us just before the shutdown and several that have joined us since. And we're excited to be able to offer this opportunity to share with you more about who we are as a fellowship and about our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And we've condensed our Inquirer series down to 5 sessions. And that series is part of our path to membership. So we hope to have a new member ceremony in mid-June together. We hope that you'll be able to join us for that. We start a new month together, and thus we have a new plate partner for this month of May. Our plate partner for this month is the Women and Children's Alliance. They've been a plate partner with us for many years now. And we've been devoted supporters and champions of their work, supporting women and children in our community who are in need. And here to share with us a little bit more about their mission and how that mission in particular is critical in this moment that we find ourselves in is their philanthropy manager, Laura Hahn. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm really thrilled that I can connect with you guys and tell you a little bit. I see people waving, so I'm going to wave back too. It's really lovely to see you all and be here. And, you know, the first thing I want to say is, so I'm from England originally. So I hope you can all understand my accent as I tell you a little bit more about the Women's and Children's Alliance. So our mission is to bring safety, healing, and freedom to women, men, and children that may be victims of domestic abuse or sexual assault. And to talk a little bit, I guess, about what we're seeing right now. So the first thing I will say is that 1 in 3 women are a victim of domestic abuse and 1 in 6 men. So it is a problem throughout many communities, and part of our role is obviously to spread awareness and also to help as many people as we can. And so to say a little bit about what's happening right now as we're in COVID-19, obviously, because of the global health crisis, there is a lot of restrictions in place. We're finding that abuse is becoming more frequent in homes, and as well as that, it's becoming more severe. You know, obviously, the stay-at-home order has been lifted somewhat recently, but for the past 6 weeks, people have been told that they have to stay at home. And the biggest phrase that we say is, unfortunately, home isn't safe for everybody. And so that's one of the reasons why our work is so important right now. We have a range of community services that operate from our crises center, which is down on Washington and 8th. And those services continue to operate a bit. We actually do a lot of our work on Zoom and through teleconferencing as well. And also, obviously, we have our 2 shelters. So we have an emergency shelter, Serena's Home, and we also have our transitional shelter, which is called Laura's Home, conveniently not named after me, but very easy for me to remember. And a couple of things that I will tell you about what we're seeing right now. So in April of 2019, we had 125 calls to our emergency domestic abuse helpline. And unfortunately, in April 2020, we saw 285 calls. So the increase is significant. A couple of other increases we've seen. So in our emergency shelter, we usually have 1 emergency intake every 6 to 8 weeks. In the past 6 weeks, we've had 5 emergency intakes, so effectively nearly 1 a week. And that's kind of what we're seeing, is that the level of violence and abuse that people are suffering is increasing significantly during this time. And so obviously, our services are more important than ever. We continue to operate. Our doors are open. We, as I said, still have our shelters. And we still have a lot of our community services. And to be honest, that's why our fundraising, and we are so thankful for groups like yourself that come forward at this time, to continue to support us, because we've seen an increase in the need for our services, but as well, we've had to change the way that we provide our services. So we had to invest in new equipment to be able to do things via teleconference. We actually have a service that operates at the Ada County Courthouse that provides civil protection orders for domestic abuse victims. The courthouse is now closed, so we actually have moved our provision to our crises center, and we do those hearings with judges over Zoom. We had to get obviously personal protective equipment and things like hazard pay as well. So there's been some increased costs, but obviously also there's an increased need for our service. So we are just very grateful for your help. And one of the things I will do is, so we do have, I'm just going to hold it up, but we do have our little shoe cards that have our helpline numbers on. So I know you probably can't really see this very well, but I will post this information in the chat box, because there may well be people that you know, or friends of friends that maybe could benefit from our services. So I'll make sure that I share that with you guys. But again, a huge thank you for your support at this time. It really means a lot. And like I said, the phrase that we're trying to get out there is that home is not safe for everybody. So please, check in with your friends, your family, and if they need our help, we're here to help them.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Again, we're really pleased to be able to partner with the WCA and support the extraordinary work that you're doing, always, but particularly now. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. In this month of May, we also enter a new spiritual theme. The theme for this month is thresholds. And it's a beautiful theme for us to explore in this moment. Who knew how perfect it would be for us to be considering the thresholds of our lives together, and the threshold moment we find ourselves in right now together. And so I invite you on this journey to consider and explore how you encounter and embrace the thresholds of your own life and of our lives collectively knit together. So I'll invite us all to take a breath together, knowing that when we breathe with one another. We breathe connected to our community and to the beloveds that we long to see in person. And as you breathe, I invite you to look around your space, to orient yourself to where you are, to ground yourself in this sacred moment. And in this holy time when we pause to come together to lift up that which is worthy in our lives. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless stream.
Each week, we light our flaming chalice, a symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope, love, and justice. We join in this lighting in solidarity and community with hundreds of other Unitarian Universalists lighting chalices today in homes and in virtual worship services, reminding us that we are connected to one another and to a larger community of faith and love. If you have a chalice nearby, we invite you to light it with us. And if you are able, hold it up to your camera and switch to gallery view to see all of the chalices being lit today. Then you're invited to share in the chat. The chalice is lit on 20th Street. Today, Conley and Greta Watson will join me and light a chalice on 20th Street. As our chalices are lit, we offer you this call to worship adapted from Arlen Goff.
Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age.
Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation from what we were and what we are to what we can be.
Here in this moment, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day lives of distance and isolation into a space of connection to each other, to the sacred, to the holy.
How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together.
And let us sing together. Please join us in singing hymn 88, Calm Soul of All Things. The words are on your screen.
Calm soul of all things, make it one to feel amid the city's joy. But there abides a peace of thine. I did not wake and cannot want. Thou wilt unite the strife, the cry, the purge of me with Father's gift. Come, come, we mourn, Lord, as we die, before I have begun to live.
I invite our children to move a little closer to your screens for our Time for All Ages. We are going to tell our story using our Wonder Board, which helps us ask questions about what we learn. Our story this morning is The Magic Vase and is retold by Margaret Silf in the book she compiled, 100 Wisdom Stories from Around the World. We begin our story with a doorway. This month, we're talking about thresholds. So places of entrance and exit where we begin and end our journey. Thresholds are where we meet change and then decide how to act in the face of that change. Doorways are where we change rooms in our house or apartment, or go outside to go on adventures. And this might not seem like a big transition, but it's an important one we make every day. Let's see if we can notice all the ordinary and big changes that happen in our story. There once was a poor family who lived in a little house in a neglected part of the city. They were trying really hard to be a happy family, but the times were hard and jobs were not easy to come by. They were struggling. As time went on, they began to feel more and more alone and unsupported. They stopped cleaning their windows. They didn't tend to the little patch of garden in the front of the house. The paint peeled off the door and cracks appeared in the brickwork. The threshold of their home showed sadness in their lives. One day, the eldest son walked through the doorway, across the little garden path, and down the street. He was roaming through the town and came to the farmer's market. The farmers and craftspeople had set up their goods, and there was a bustle of activity. And this market was special to him. He came here to enjoy the excitement of the morning market. He stopped to watch the people buying colorful fruit and vegetables, freshly baked bread, and tempting cakes. He noticed the line at the fish stall and took a breath of joy as he passed the stall of fresh summer flowers. But the stall that attracted him most was a little second-hand stall tucked away among the awnings of the regular markets. He had never noticed this one before. He stopped to investigate, and there, hidden in the dark recesses, he noticed a beautiful vase. This vase was simple and gray, but when the sunlight hit it, it held the most vibrant rainbow he'd ever seen, and it took his breath away. Rapidly, we're going to set this down over here. Quickly, he checked his pockets to make sure that he had enough money, and he did, just enough to meet the cost of buying the vase. But there would be nothing left over. He thought to himself, why not? even if we have a lean couple of days, I'm going to buy this vase. Daddy Ty will love it. Everyone will love it. And he handed over the contents of his pocket to the woman behind the counter. As she wrapped the vase in brown paper, the craftswoman said to the boy, "Enjoy it, why don't you? And treat it well, because this is a magical vase." With these mysterious words ringing in his ear, the boy went home, proudly carrying his purchase. And to his surprise, nobody got mad at him for spending all his money on it. Quite the opposite. Everybody at home was delighted with the vase. Daddy Morgan held the vase up to the sunlight, and they realized how dark and dull the front room was. And they went to the cellar, and they got out their special brushes and paint and gave the room a makeover. And the second son, so our first guy's little brother, noticed how nice the room looked with its fresh coat of paint. So he grabbed a bucket of water and washed the windows and the front door, and for the first time in years, sunlight streamed in through the window, making the vase grow brighter. The third son, looked out the new bright windows, and he realized what a state the garden was in. And he went outside to dig it up, pulling all the weeds and the invasive plants and making their flower beds ready to garden. The fourth son saw these new garden beds and planted seeds in them and watered them lovingly all throughout the spring. When summer came, there were bright flowers. Here's the bunch. There were bright flowers, and the youngest daughter, playing in the yard, noticed all of these beautiful flowers and picked some to give to Daddy Ty. "Here are some pretty flowers, Daddy Ty," she said, "because we all love you." And Ty was overjoyed. With tears rising in his eyes and a lump in his throat, he put the flowers inside of the magical vase. I wonder, is this vase really magical? What did the vase help each of the people notice better? What kinds of beauty have you noticed all around you lately? I wonder what change the family met. How was it a big, dramatic change? How was it a simple and ordinary change? What did each person do to make those changes happen? Is there something you can do to be a helper in your family? So we might not notice, but our homes work really hard to support us, keeping us the right temperature, giving us space to play and eat and learn comfortably. I wonder what's something you can do to show your house appreciation. This morning, our children are invited to join me in our first ever children's chapel. This is a Zoom room set up specifically for interactive worship for children preschool through elementary age. We will sing our children's recessional words that we are all used to. The words will appear on your order of screen regardless. See you in our children's bowl. The link will be posted in your chat box.
We encounter thresholds in our lives all the time. Some big and life-changing, some small but important, and others that happen every day. As I'm sure many of you are, I am feeling like as a country and a world, we are in the midst of a major life-changing threshold with this pandemic. There are things about it that are both exciting and terrifying at the same time. I am trying to just be in these moments as much as I can, trying to not dwell on all the things we can't do right now, and trying to not worry about what the future will look like and hold. I'm certainly not always very good at it. It's easy to be sad or worried, but I'm trying to focus on the present moment. Enjoying daily walks with my kids, realizing I'm getting to spend more time with them than I probably ever will again, which has its own ups and downs for sure. In the Soul Matters packet for this month, it states, what if the true invitation of a threshold is not to successfully move from here to there, but instead to just sit and pause? What if we saw thresholds as resting places rather than as those moving walkways that transport us through airports? What if thresholds help us become by asking us to just be for a while? No moving, just noticing and naming, less traveling and more listening. At the beginning of this year, I decided to start a gratitude journal, and I feel it was fortuitous timing given how 2020 has unfolded so far. I write down one thing each night before I go to sleep that I'm thankful for from my day. It has been a grounding spiritual exercise that helps me be in the moment and listen and pay attention to the hope, the joy, and the gratitude.
Thank you, Shireen. One of the ways that we honor a threshold in our community by paying attention to the joy and gratitude is through our giving. We take up an offering each week to help sustain the ministry of our fellowship, of our community, even through the distance, and to help support the ministry of our plate partner this month, the wonderful WCA. We're so glad to be supporting them. You can give to our Sunday offering by going to our website, boiseuu.org, and clicking Give at the top right corner of the screen on the website. There, it's highlighted for you in a yellow heart. You'll be taken to our donor page where you can write the amount you wish to give in the Sunday offering box if you want to give it straight to the split, 75-25. If you would like your gift to be handled differently or split differently, please use the special contribution box and just note for us in the comments what you'd like to have happen. And you know, we are also at the very final stages of our annual giving drive. And again, we're so grateful to all of you for your overwhelming responsiveness and your overwhelming generosity to our drive. And if there's a few of you out there who still haven't yet been able to make a pledge, we invite you to do that anytime. Again, you can go to our website, click on the graphic that says Annual Giving Drive, and you'll be taken to our page where our pledge form is, and you can fill it out right there. We are really thankful for all of you and all of the ways that you give of your time and your talent and your resources to this community and to the good work that we do in the world. Because when we give, we're saying something about what it is that we believe in, about how we let our values lead us through the world. Those values of welcome, those values of connection, those values of service and support to the most vulnerable among us, and to protecting our precious planet. We thank you in advance for your generosity. Our offering will now be received. Thank you, Carrie. Thresholds are part of our everyday lives. They accompany us throughout our existence. They are the spaces that we pass through in any transition in life, the moments that connect one part of life to another. And oftentimes when we encounter thresholds, we talk as if our work is to pass through them successfully. We talk about making healthy transitions. We seek advice and support for other people as we decide which thresholds we want to cross through or which ones we might resist. And in that paradigm, the goal then seems that we are figuring out how to travel forward in the right way. And if you're anything like me, you might be a little attached to doing things the right way. But the poet John O'Donohue describes thresholds a little bit differently. He describes them as the shorelines of new worlds, a frontier that divides two different atmospheres, rhythms, territories, in which a great complexity of emotion comes alive. I think we can all certainly relate to that in the threshold moment we're experiencing right now, where a great complexity of emotion comes alive every day. The thresholds of our lives necessitate change. They require movement. We don't ever cross a threshold and become exactly the same person as we were before. The space is different. The experiences are different. Sometimes we go through those thresholds willingly, and sometimes we go with a lot of resistance. Sometimes life pushes us across and there's no turning back. Consider for a moment some of the many thresholds of your own life. How many have you encountered? How many have been exciting and full of possibility? Which ones did you feel a little more resistance to? Which ones felt forced upon you by life circumstances? But then think back to that moment on the cusp of a transition, to that frontier, that shoreline. What did you notice? What do you remember about how it felt? Oftentimes, it's really easy for us to get swept up in the transition and the change, and we don't really pay much attention to that threshold space itself, that space in between the moments. I know that I am often eager to get moving and to get to the new thing and the new tasks, or sometimes I'm holding on what I've left behind, holding on to it a little too tightly. Many of us certainly have a little bit of that inner need to feel in control of our lives. But the threshold moment is that moment of the in-between, that moment of space, of pause, of unknown and uncertainty. There's a wonderful contemporary parable floating about the World Wide Web. It's the parable of the trapeze. It's a beautiful story written by Dannon Perry, where she describes her life using the metaphor of a trapeze, in hanging on to the bar and swinging through life, hanging on pretty tightly. and swinging through life, but then in moments of aliveness and growth, seeing that next bar of the trapeze swinging toward her, and knowing that if she really wants to pursue that growth and that opportunity, she's going to have to reach for that bar. And every time she reaches in that new transition, she thinks to herself, gee, if I could only reach and grab that bar without having to let go of the old one. But then reminding herself that it never quite works that way, that there's always that moment when reaching for the next bar, that she has to let go of the old bar, of the old life, and that just that moment of the great unknown and uncertainty and catching that next bar, sinking fully into that void, into that uncertainty, but also into that momentary place of pause and rest. A place where we can welcome our own being without the need to change or charge ahead or hold on to the bar of life behind us. So that in that pause, we can be our own truest self. That truest becoming can emerge, and we can be present enough to witness it and to get out of our own way so that our own fullness is expressed. That trapeze parable marks a significant threshold moment in my life, in all of our collective lives, really. I recently remembered that this very weekend marks the 5th anniversary of my final candidating Sunday, when all of you voted to call me as your next minister. Perhaps some of you remember that day. It's still a bit of a hazy blur for me, but I certainly remember the moment of walking back into your singing after the vote had happened. And interestingly, I've been thinking back, and the metaphor of the trapeze has been one that I've carried with me for many years. You might remember that the first sermon that I preached for you at the beginning of the candidating week, I shared my own trapeze story and talked about the inner focus that it takes to actually fly on a trapeze, the intensity of the moment, the beauty of the moment of being so high above the fray of life and feeling like you're flying. It's a really great threshold metaphor in finding that inner strength and courage it takes to step off the platform for the first time and fly. Interestingly, on the day the search committee invited me to be your candidate, I think it's safe enough to tell you now that I didn't say yes immediately. I asked for some extra time to consider the offer. It was a true threshold moment for me, when I really had to make myself pause, knowing that the yes was like stepping off the platform or grabbing that next bar of the trapeze, and that it would change my life significantly. It was a moment of terrifying exhilaration, just like flying on the trapeze. And that same day of the offer, when I asked for more time, Lori Watson, who was on the search committee, sent me that parable of the trapeze that I just shared with you in an email. I recall that I think the search committee knew that I was a fan of the trapeze. I had mentioned something about it in my materials. We talked about it briefly, and that I had flown on the trapeze before, but I don't think anyone knew the story was going to appear in my first sermon. And that story, that parable of the trapeze, truly did change my life. Look at us now. Look at all that we have done together. Look at how we have grown together. Look at us embracing technology and staying connected together. I could never have imagined that I would be ministering in the midst of a global pandemic. I could never have imagined I'd be ministering entirely online, and that I would find a deep appreciation for it. There's something sweet and intimate about seeing one another's faces up close, about seeing our musicians right there in front of me, about knowing that we share this strange reality and that our being together matters. My fellow boofers, you are my magic face. And we are in the midst of a major threshold moment right now, all of us together, having been abruptly pulled back from our lives. And this moment is teaching us a deeper appreciation for presence and compassion amidst great suffering, for mindfulness, for gratitude for life's ordinary moments and simple pleasures, for nature's beauty, all of which feels a little more alive, a little more tangible, maybe even a little more vital than it did before. And we're about to just slowly start emerging from this threshold moment. And it feels a bit strange and scary and uncertain. But what if, particularly in this time, the true invitation of this threshold moment is not to successfully move forward, but instead just to sit and pause and be. I encourage all of us to stay in this threshold moment as long as we can, as long as is needed to welcome the inner wisdom in this quiet space that we can each claim for ourselves. And in that wisdom to remember that when we emerge, when we do finally cross this threshold, we don't leave everything behind, but we take with us all the gifts of this time, all the new insights, all the beauty into whatever comes next. And in that pause, in this rest, even if for some of us that pause and rest feels fleeting, we cultivate a sense of curiosity, of hope, of possibility, of openness, so that in our embracing, we can become the builders of what's next, while also holding on to a deeper peace, greater balance, and a prevailing love.
One of the ways we can embody that threshold invitation to more listening is to receive and carry the joys and sorrows of this community. You may participate in this time by typing your own joys and sorrows into the chat box. And while we watch and listen to a favorite Unitarian hymn, this prayer in song by Carolyn McDade, Spirit of Life, sung by All Souls Choir in Washington, D.C. I invite you to place your hand on your heart as you read our collective joys and sorrows.
find comfort in one another. May we find hope in this moment. May we find peace within. May we find love awaiting, beckoning, prevailing. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen. So earlier this week, I posted on Facebook inviting some of you to share a photo and a brief description of a threshold moment in your life. This was one of the spiritual exercises from our theme-based ministry resources. And the exercise invites us to look at several photos from that threshold time in our lives and notice the subtle differences and what they might tell you about your threshold moment. So I want to share with you a few of the photos that came to me and one of my own. Here are some photos. Here we have a beautiful photo on the left side of the screen of Gwen Reed on her wedding day, which she shared was also the same day that an aunt of Bill's had passed away. And so being in that threshold moment of a new life beginning and a life ending. But look at the joy on her face. Isn't that delightful? And over on the right side of your screen, a photo of Connie Johnson, a graduation day photo, the opportunities of life unfolding before her. At the bottom of your screen, Dina Duke shared the story of 4 of our lovely people toe tapping. It looks like they're out dancing, having a good time, maybe dancing for the first time. That threshold moments, those threshold moments that invite us to try new things and to ask ourselves who will come with us, who will support us on this journey. And the photo at the top of your screen is my threshold moment from my ordination day. With this is the laying on of hands, when all of my family and colleagues and community laid their hands upon me in what was the most extraordinary moment, feeling the energy of the room and recognizing that these were the lives and the people I would carry with me throughout my ministry. These are just some of the threshold moments that we can witness in our community, and I'm sure many of you have moments of your own. Keep sharing your photos on the Facebook post. I'd love to see them. This exercise asks us to get curious with some questions for ourselves about that threshold moment. What do you notice about yourself? Who is with you? Who helped you get through the moment or celebrate the moment? Did you resist? What gifts, if any, helped you cross that threshold? What did you leave behind? And what did you take with you? These are great questions to ask ourselves in any threshold moment about a way to help us get clear about our own path and to get curious about what is to come. And make that intentional crossing or that intentional reach for the next bar. Because we know that our life's transitions are not always smooth. They're not always pretty. They're not always fabulous and full of joy. Sometimes we stay in that threshold for a long time, maybe a little bit too long. Sometimes we leap across the threshold and tear down walls and rebuild everything. No matter how big or small, most transitions result in a pretty drastic change in our lives. So embracing the threshold moments is an act of self-care, a chance to pause and center and consider ourselves before moving to the next moment. Embracing thresholds is all about the choices we make and the stories we tell ourselves about what it all meant. What choices will we make in this threshold moment together? And what stories will we tell ourselves about what is or what is to come? The temptation in the embracing is sometimes to just run headlong into the next moment, or to accept it out of obligation because society tells us we're supposed to. But what if the true embracing lies in that moment of pause, in the discernment about what comes next rather than in the next thing itself? What can we cultivate in the threshold that is worthy of our best selves, that is worthy of our embrace? A threshold is a space to imagine a new way, a new self, not moving or pushing, but sitting and cultivating. To allow the space and time to reflect on the past, present, and future, and to imagine a new beginning. Here we are in this threshold moment, as we're being invited and sometimes even urged to get back to normal. But we ought to consider what normal looks like. And is that what we really want? If we are led by our Unitarian Universalist principles and values, we don't want to go back to normal. We don't want to go back to the normal of profits over people, of corporations ignoring the climate crisis, of overcrowded prisons and families shut out at our borders trying to create a better life. This is not the normal I want to go back to. As we cross this threshold, we will need to tear down some walls and create something new. During this pandemic, amidst all the suffering and sickness and death, we have also witnessed a beautiful new normal emerging. One that has always been with us, but sometimes gets eclipsed by the machinations of big business and by politics. This emergence of community-centered ways of being, of an orientation toward the collective thriving of all of us. People all around us are leading and living with deep love and compassion for one another. Restaurants are donating food to the hungry and their own meager profits to frontline workers. Pop-up food pantries, mutual aid groups, interfaith cooperation to feed families in need. All of this is happening. This week, this community, this Booth community, thanks to your generous donations of food and grocery cards, we were able to help feed more than 75 people in 2 separate projects. And I hope that we're able to continue to do that and offer that support every week. The Reverend Bill Sinkford, former Unitarian Universalist Association president, writes, "It's the choices we make that glimpses of hope can be found. And out of that hope, we emerge with a new commitment to embracing our thresholds with open hearts and open arms, with courage and strength to hold on to each other and hold on to hope, to rise together, to love bigger, and to build a new way. This is the threshold moment I long to enter with all of you together. May it be so."
Several years ago, composer Daryl Grant created the beautiful cantata recreating the story of Ruby Bridges in song with a full choir and 6-piece jazz band. Influenced by the words of Maya Angelou, the final song is titled "We Rise." Inspired by this recent moment in the words of Reverend Bill Sinkford, Daryl Grant invited the original cast with several UUs to create the new version of the song incorporating Sinkford's words. As we consider this threshold moment and our encountering and embracing of many more thresholds to come, may we hold that vision of rising together in our hearts. And as Grant himself writes, fueled by compassion and our willingness to rebuild trust, expand community, and stand for justice. Here are Reverend Sinkford's words followed by the video, We Rise. There is no uncertainty about the suffering around us, nor uncertainty that the worst is still days ahead for us. The possible futures we face never included an absence of suffering, but the possibilities for how we move through this time are many. And the outcomes, the community that will emerge out of these trials, those possibilities are many as well. And in this, the choices that we make, that glimpses of hope can be found. One possibility is that we will accept these evils as the best we can do. Those of us who are privileged enough and lucky enough to make it through will sink back into that normalcy in which evil is allowed to triumph. We will be unwilling or unable to sustain our awareness of the suffering around us. We'll go along to get along. Closing our eyes to the suffering around us, we'll gather at our tables again, share the bread and the wine and the fellowship, and enjoy our privileged places without changing the rules, without challenging whether the way things are, the way things have been, is the way things have to be. But that is not the only possibility.
There is no uncertainty about the suffering around us.
Nor uncertainty that the worst is still days ahead for us.
The possible futures we face never included an absence of suffering.
But the possibilities for how we move through this time are many.
And it is in the choices that we make that glimpses of hope can be found.
Possibility
is that we will accept these evils as the best that we can do.
But that is not the only possibility. There is another.
There is another.
There is another. There is another. Possibility that love might just prove to be real.
And prove to be resilient.
And stronger in the end than our self-interests and our failings.
Friends, I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. May we rise up to find a brand new day together filled with the hope, the love, the connection that we have felt in these months, days, and years together. And may we bring that forward in crossing the threshold together, building a new way, a new life where all can thrive. Go in peace. So we're going to move into our breakout sessions and our Q&A with the board. Thank you all for joining us again this morning for worship. It's such a delight to click a button and see so many faces out on the screen there. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to, in order to be able to give people choices, I'm going to create the breakout rooms and launch them. And so you'll get that invitation window to join the breakout room. But if you would like to stay and listen to the Q&A with the board, just decline the invitation and you'll stay right where you are in this central meeting room. If you would rather go have a breakout time and chat with some folks, feel free to do that. You can always come back in. Just know that that board Q&A will be back here in that main meeting space when you come back in. Okay? So we're going to figure out how this will work together. Okay, so the breakout rooms have been open and you've been invited to join them. And again, if you have want to hear from our board members and stay present, just decline that invitation and stay right where you are. And I will shortly hand this space over to our board president, Rachel Murphy. We're just going to keep our announcement slides running a little bit while we get settled here. Great. Thank you all for sticking around, those of you that are with us. I see that Rachel Murphy is on, and there she is with her video.
Hello, everyone.
So everybody, I have given you back the power of your own microphones. And but we're gonna let Rachel kick us off with a little bit of the information, and then I'll have her open it up to Q&A. And because there are so many of us in this space, you also see that there's a function of your Zoom where you can raise your virtual Zoom hand. You can just click raise hand, and it shows Rachel a little blue hand next to your name. So that might help her navigate a Q&A space a little bit better than just a voice talking and her having to search for the yellow highlighted screen. Take it away, Rachel.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Reverend Sarah said, we on the board wanted to provide a space